So welcome. Thank you all for joining us for I think it's our inaugural and hopefully not the last Women in Insurance Luncheon. We really appreciate everyone joining us. Before we get going, I want to give all of us an opportunity to introduce ourselves, kind of our role, a little bit of our background in the industry. So Mark, I'll start down the end with you, our ally.
I'm Mark Brading. At ReSource Pro, I run our advisory and research consulting business. I was part of Strategy Meets Action, which was a advisory firm focused on the P&C insurance industry, along with my partner, Deb Smallwood, who you'll hear from in a little bit.
Sabrina.
Good afternoon. And first of all, let me just thank ReSource Pro for having us and also for having this topic in the agenda. So I think that speaks volumes. So I'm Sabrina Hart. I'm delighted to be with you today. I currently serve as the president and CEO of Munich Re Specialty Insurance here in North America. Prior to that, I served in a variety of roles with Zurich for 20 plus years. Started my career in insurance, not necessarily by intention, but as a math degree, it was an option. And I started with a small regional carrier. Served in a variety of roles over the years, from largely an underwriting track, served in operations for a bit, served in Switzerland as head of risk operations globally for a bit, and then back to the business as CUO, and then as the head of the business unit.
Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Maheu. I am the Vice President of Partnerships and Industry Relations for Vertafore, focusing on the carrier and MGA side of the world. So my insurance career goes way back, many years, starting at a carrier. I'm in the claims department. While I was there, became enamored with the coverage side of the world, and actually went on to go to law school, graduate from law school, and practice insurance coverage law for a couple of years. I then had the opportunity to join the National Underwriter Company, if any of you are familiar with them. I started out doing policy interpretation and coverage analysis, answering subscriber questions and writing content. And then fast forward 12 years at that organization, a couple acquisitions, a variety of roles. I was running the professional publishing CE and training division for the whole company, which was insurance, legal, and financial services. After that, I went to an organization that worked with professional associations, so insurance associations, legal, financial services, and we helped provide support for those organizations with member communications, marketing, sales, you name it. And then finally, through one of the insurance associations I worked with there, I had the opportunity to come on there as an executive running their professional publishing, member communications, and did that for a couple of years before I had the chance to go to Vertafore, which is where I am today. So, clearly the direct path from that journalism degree in college worked out exactly as planned, right?
That's impressive.
Deb.
Hello, everyone. Deb Smallwood. Let me start off by saying I think I believe the insurance industry is an amazing industry that's vast, diverse, and just a wonderful place to have amazing careers, especially as women. For myself, I always looked up and out and saw infinite possibilities and always said, why not me? 46 years in the insurance industry at the carrier and technology and services and a variety of roles. I had 20 different roles and titles and promotions across 46 years. After 46 years, I said, okay, time for semi-retirement. And I've rebooted into Deb 2.0. And I've shifted from why not me to why not us? And I've launched a self-empowerment platform that is centered by a book and a framework, and offering a variety of services and mastermind classes to inspire women like you, high-performing, high-achieving, to really believe in yourself and step into your power and have the career that you desire. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
And I'm Meredith Barnes-Cook. I am a partner in ReSource Pro's Transformation Services organization. I am celebrating proud 40-year member of the insurance industry. If anybody was in our talent panel over in the retail track, I am the one person who raised their hand and said I chose insurance as a career. I worked at a retail agency when I was in college, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with both the right and left brain aspects of it, of every scenario is different, and everything I'm doing is helping someone. No matter it's, a policy servicing request, adding a vehicle to a policy, or handling the scenarios with a claim, or trying to figure out, which carrier should we renew them to. So I started at Liberty Mutual a week after I graduated as a workers' compensation claims adjuster, and someone saw in me what I hadn't seen in myself is kind of my superpowers. I'm really great at doing things I've never done before. And so they just kept offering me opportunities to do something completely different. So that enabled me to work across claims, across all lines of business, personal and commercial. And then that morphed into operations, which morphed into the business side of technology, because everything keeps changing. And then the spirit of continuing to toss me things I'd never seen before, I took on managed care, call center, loss prevention. And then got the joy of spending 10 years in product and underwriting when I finally understood claims. Because I saw claims from the outside in and went, oh, now I get it. Like I saw that very, very different lens. After I left Liberty after 33 short years, I jumped into, in the spirit of, again, doing something I'd never done before. I said, well, hey, working at an AI startup would be something completely new and fun, which it absolutely was, and got to be part of a 60-person growing to 200 in 2.5 years, hyper growth. And I discovered growth and change at a corporation or to startup is all about people, and a lot of the same things apply. And then courtesy of Mark, I had the opportunity to join ReSource Pro about 1.5 years ago. So we're thrilled here to talk about and share our experience. And so I'll start off with a few interesting / sobering statistics. There's a Women in Insurance initiative, represents that women we're about 60% of the insurance industry overall, 77% in the lower level positions, and not even 34% of executive roles. And if that's a publicly held carrier, the executive positions that are women, it's 23%. So if you've looked at McKinsey, they just published a book, several partners there, about the broken rung. The whole premise is, and across any industry, the break it's not the glass ceiling, it's the management level, because that's where the executives are hired from. And so that's where they call it the broken rung. That's where the data shows, and including in insurance where the problem happens. In agencies, women owners or principals is going down. They were 31% in 2022, and now it's down to 26% in 2023. And yet 75% of those customer-facing roles are women. And so there's again something that's breaking in that part of our ecosystem as well. When we think about kind of, technology is the enabler, it's the tail, not the dog, the enabler of everything. According to Forbes, only 25% of the tech workforce is women. And when you look at the executive roles in the technology realm, and any insurance entity has some size of a tech workforce, only about 11% are executives in those tech companies. So that's a challenge. And then we think about the CIO space, and again, the same problem is less than 20% of CIOs are women in the U.S. And there's 70,000 CIOs out there in the U.S. I mean, various sizes of companies. So we definitely have some challenges, to say the least. So Sabrina, I want to start off with you, and you kindly you offered in our prep call to give us your take on, there's been so much news and discussion on the whole topic of DEI, DEIB, in businesses that are leaning in or leaning out, as the case may be, in their programs. What is your view on the insurance industry's position when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So thank you for the question, and I do think it's a really important question for these audiences, because I don't want myself or you guys or the women in insurance to get distracted or to just get discouraged by what maybe is going on externally. So and these would be my personal views. So my commitment is not to be distracted by what I hear. And maybe the best way to answer it very briefly would be just with a little story about where my passion around women in insurance and creating opportunity came from. So back in 2005 or '06, I attended an event hosted by Deloitte, I think. And I met all these women, a lot of them from Deloitte, a lot of them from Chubb. I, at the time, was from Zurich. I was the only woman there from Zurich. So I went back and I thought, there's some really dynamic women in this industry. But if I were a young female just starting my insurance career, I might be more interested in Deloitte or in Chubb. And I thought, I loved Zurich where I worked, and I thought, why not Zurich? So I love Deb's comment about why not me or why not us. I thought, why not Zurich? It's a fantastic organization. I reached out to Deloitte. I said, tell me a bit about how you developed this network that is so powerful. Fast forward, I found a partner in crime, I call it. So a colleague, we scheduled an appointment with our CEO. And we went and met with him with a request for resources and a request for budget, and with a strategy of why it was important. You know, 3 minutes in when you've got a deal, right? When the CEO stands up and says, wait just a second, let me go grab my notes. He had just come back from the World Economic Forum, and he had attended a session that an anthropologist was presenting. He opened his notes. Your timing is perfect. Women make decisions this way. Women do jungle gym. Men do ladders. And he went down this whole list of the differences between men and women and how sometimes we approach our work. So he said, me thinking more broadly, this is just perfect timing. Thank you, thank you. So we left there with some budget, not a lot of resource, but we were committed to, kind of the building the network and building a resource. The reason that I had personal interest in that at that time was that event that I went to, but it was also in the research that at the time, it seemed so far away. By 2020, this was one of our bullet points, by 2020, 54% of the college grads will be female. So to me, in 2007, 2008, it was a strategic issue of attracting people to the attracting females to the industry, because we want to attract the best and the brightest. We want to retain them. So it was a strategic issue. So now let me answer the question. Guess what? In 2025, it's still a strategic issue. Therefore, at least at Munich Re, we remain very much committed to our diversity and inclusion agenda. And what I've heard more broadly around the insurance industry is very much the same. Now, I am hearing a little noise around maybe rebranding it. Look, I'm not going to be distracted by that either, but an inclusionary environment is a strategic issue, and that hasn't changed since probably many of us really developed an interest and a passion. So I think we're committed to it. Don't be distracted and keep looking ahead.
Such good advice. That's such a good way to put it in context. So stay the course, stay focused, do more. Now, Deb, I'm going to put the light on you. I mean, you've held a whole range of executive roles across both insurance and technology. CEO, vice president, director, senior partner, and CIO. When you became a CIO in insurance, at that time, only about 11% of those roles across all industry in the U.S. were being held by women. What was your journey to secure that role, and why today has it inspired you to create your program to support other women who are wanting to become a CIO?
Yeah, I love this question because that was about 20 years ago that I was a CIO, and the numbers really haven't changed much. And let me just tell you how I became a CIO. It was never in my career path, like a desire to be a CIO. But as I was, pivoting and moving, it became a strategic move for me, especially if I wanted to consult to CIOs. Why not be a CIO, especially since most CIOs are men? It would give me credibility. So I was a strategic partner, working with an insurer, a CEO and a COO, and working on their IT plan. And they needed a new CIO. And I said, you could hire someone like me. And now I knew what I was doing, right? But I said, you could hire someone like me, meaning my background, my skills, my style. And the CEO looked at me and said, when can you start and how much do you want? So it's another example of why not me. I teed up that position, right? And it was probably one of the more difficult roles that I had, being a CIO, because you sit between business and technology, but it's fulfilling, because if you can transform the industry, it's pretty cool. So fast forward to today. The numbers are still pretty bad, and as I did research across self-empowerment, I found that the broken rungs, the pipeline for women in tech is extremely low. And so working with 6 insurers as sponsors, we've developed Becoming a Woman CIO program, a mastermind program. We have 6 women. It's interesting, there's 6 male CIOs sponsoring young women. And the way I look at this is if I can get one more woman as a CIO in insurance, we're successful, right? So helping the industry, helping these 6 companies mentor and guide and stand up these women. And the third thing is guiding and mentoring these women, right? Because women are different than men. Getting women out of the weeds of operations and getting them to think strategically and politically, and understanding that when you want to reach those high levels, it's a different way of connecting and networking and surrounding yourself with people to help elevate you so you can survive and thrive at a C level. And just helping them overall with confidence. So we're excited about the program, and we'll see where it goes.
That's fantastic. So you're giving back from everything that you went through.
Hey, Meredith, could I just maybe opine? One of the, and I've just met Deb through this, but she just said something that really resonated with me when she was talking about becoming a CIO, and she didn't interview for the job, right? They said, can we hire you, and how much do you want? And I think that's a real lesson for all of us, is that every day is an interview. My personal story is I interviewed and applied for my first job and my second job. And I've had a lot of jobs too, kind of like Deb described. So just keep that in mind. Every day and every task is an interview. Somebody is observing, somebody is watching, and they will make hiring decisions based on that. So that really resonated with me.
If anyone knows Carla Harris, an amazing woman, Morgan Stanley, and she's a singer and just amazing. And she has this great expression of, what are the 3 things that people say about you when you're not in the room? Because most of the decisions about your career occur when you're not in the room. And as you said that, I'm like, yeah, me too. I probably, for all the roles I've held, and I've lost track of how many, 15 or so, I've probably interviewed for maybe 4. Because it was just, I was getting tapped on the shoulder. Go do this, go do that. And what did I learn early? I was like, okay. And because I learned the worst outcome was going to be I would discover something I didn't love and or I wasn't great at. Now, that's not necessarily the journey I wanted to have, but that is important to know. Most importantly, what you don't love, because in the hard days, you want to at least have that like emotional attachment and the passion for what you're doing on those tough moments. And so, and I just said, okay, somebody else saw something in me I hadn't yet figured out, and if I trusted them, what was my reservation? Which is kind of interesting as an insurance person who should be risk averse. But it was also kind of like, if I wasn't going to bet on me, then why would anyone else? And so it's really kind of believing in yourself and, seeing every opportunity, every conversation, you have no idea where it could lead. Led me to ReSource Pro, actually, if I think about it. So Kelly, I'm going to kind of put the spotlight on you. You've definitely had, like I think all of us, a career jungle gym, and then some, and you've kind of worked in the industry in all kind of so many different aspects of the ecosystem, and obviously technology is the enabler of everything in any industry, and obviously more and more so in insurance. And yet we continue, as I mentioned before, so few women proportionally pursue a technology career. What's from your journey, your experience outside in and now inside the technology part of the industry of how do you get people in and further women along?
Yeah, so mean, first and foremost, there's a few things. There's a lot of things I won't have time to even go into, but there's a few things. I'd start with, we have to provide the support and the mentorship. And that's going to be a theme here. You're already hearing it. But for women to navigate their career paths and also to build the skills and the confidence they need to thrive. Now, part of that is developing diverse talent pools to ensure that not only the recruitment, but also the promotion processes are fair and unbiased. And we also need to make sure that we're looking at more female junior talent, because by attracting and nurturing younger leaders, younger females, we start to build that really strong pipeline of female leadership. Now, second, we need to encourage diversity of thought. So, gender diversity is more than just having a certain number of females in positions. It's about encouraging that diversity of thought, of perspectives, of fostering an environment of inclusion where all voices are heard and valued. And it's about an environment where there's creativity, collaboration, innovation, which leads to a better likelihood that decisions are made based on merit and expertise rather than on gender. Now, another thing is going to the skills. There is a technical skills gap, and we need to make sure that we're providing opportunities for women to get the training support that they need. We heard some stats. I heard one about the alarming number of women who are leaving tech careers before the age of 30. And a lot of them are starting out in tech careers. They have the skills, they have the education, they have the desire, but they're leaving for a number of reasons. And unconscious bias, workforce culture, and again, the lack of opportunities to develop for that professional development. So, but we also know that people with credentials tend to have greater confidence in their technical skill sets. So, that's something, encouraging that kind of technical growth is going to lead to more women staying longer in their careers and progressing in their careers. So I think credentials, and I'm a strong advocate of professional development, and that's a big part of it. And then finally, and this is the one I probably feel the most strongly about, and I know there's some differing opinions on this, but workplace flexibility. This is huge, and I'm pretty confident I wouldn't be up on the stage today if I was not afforded that kind of flexibility. The reality is, men and women, but women in particular, still deal with balancing family and careers. We still deal with the motherhood penalty, if you will, and that often women are sometimes leaving their roles altogether, or at least just maybe not going for that promotion that they would have otherwise, because of a variety of factors. But that is typically at a pivotal time in a woman's career path too. Those two things coincide. So the flexibility, I'm not just talking about remote work, although that's important too. It can be flexible, accommodating schedules. Allowing parents and caregivers to be able to be there for their families when they need to be. I, for one, I think it's good business too, because a healthier, happier, more productive, and more loyal employee is what happens, and that's how I am, and I know that's a lot how a lot of the people that I work with are as well. So the workplace flexibility, that's huge, and I think that's going to encourage a lot more women to pursue and stay in tech fields in our industry.
And I think from what I've observed, from the outside and then for the time I was in it, the other piece, and this is true in the insurance industry as well, is in technology, roles are evolving. And there are kind of non-technical roles in the technology industry. And I think we think, my son's a software engineer, technical, like literally technical, as opposed to, right. There's all those, from customer success and, operations, sales there's just so many dimensions within the technology realm that does not require you to have a degree in C++.
Yeah, I mean, I work for an insurance technology company. I'm far from a technical person, and you heard my background. There's no, tech per se in there. But like you said, all kinds of roles at different organizations where maybe technology is a focus or a primary driver.
Yeah, thank you.
Meredith, that made me think also of like the skills evolving. I was, we're all kind of interested in AI and how we're going to transform our business with all of that. So I was experimenting myself with some AI, and I was getting a little bit different result than my colleague. And I learned a new term, and I love it. And it is a new skill. I think it's going to be the most coveted skill over the next 5 to 10 years, and it's prompt engineering. And guess what? We can all do it. I was getting a different answer because he was better at it. He was better at asking the questions than I was. And I thought, that's something we need to be talking about because that's going to be a coveted skill.
And if anybody's seen, it's gone a little viral on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram about doing yourself in a toy box using Gen AI. I did it, and I actually discovered, to your point, because the first iteration, I'm like, yeah, not quite. And I realized I didn't give it enough, and so I kept refining it. And then I got a little crazy. I added my cat, like I did, like literally my Diet Mountain Dew bottle. I started adding all those things.
Highly
but
specific.
It just, literally, I realized like I learned absolutely something while I was having fun about kind of how the tech works. And it's only as good as what you ask it. I mean, it'll still hallucinate and give you some crazy, well-formatted answers too. So verify before you trust. But yeah. Absolutely, do it in your own daily lives. You might be surprised, even if like you're trying to make travel plans or find a restaurant. So ladies, I'm going to keep the spotlight on each, and I'll have you, Sabrina, you go first. Again, you've each really navigated really, interesting and still not done yet career journeys. I know for myself, there's tough choices along the way. I had a woman that I worked for who was a great mentor and perspective, and I had a great opportunity at Liberty Mutual, my first executive role. And I just I wanted it because they're offering it to me. I didn't even apply for it. It was kind of one of those weird moments. And she said, I'm not saying no, because I would have been leaving her organization, but I want you to talk to our overall EVP, because I want you to hear from her about kind of the choices that you have no idea that she's made in her career, and sometimes it was a no. That this was not necessarily her next big move, and I just watched her propelling and rocket shipping all over the organization, and I had no idea behind the scenes she had turned down some things because she had learned how to dig deep to say, is this for me? So that was just an example, and I wound up the punchline of that was I figured out, I was like, what's my emotional reaction if I take this role? What will I feel when I get up in the morning? And my first emotion that I envisioned was I would be regretful. And I said, oh, because I realized the business unit I was in, I wasn't done yet, and that was my community, and that's how I figured out what I valued. In that moment in my life, what I valued was the community, the learning, and the opportunity to continue to grow in that space. And so I said no, and it was the wise move, and the right opportunity followed later. So Sabrina, I'd like to hear from you some of the tough choices you made.
So I didn't say no a lot. But I think some of the tough choices were probably personally motivated. When I first thought of the question, I thought, well, what are the toughest decisions you make and the most impact you have? And I thought, all of those surround people to me. The impactful is, seeing someone grow and develop. And the tougher decisions are when you realize you have colleagues in wrong roles and you have to help them identify that. But I think, Meredith, you're asking maybe on the more personal side. So as I kind of reflect on that, I think for me the toughest decision was, so I didn't grow up in South Jersey, in case you were wondering. And I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, started my insurance career in Richmond and Atlanta, and thought that was my forever life. The first toughest decision was, a call, can you come to New York and help us actually just help us out for 3 weeks. Well, I stayed 11 months, but I couldn't wait to get back to Atlanta. Fast forward a couple years later, I get the call, will you come to New York, help us out? We'd like for you to run healthcare nationally. Do it for 2 years. If it doesn't work for you, we'll get you back to Atlanta. I still see that great CEO that made me that offer, and I always thank him for never following up on that 24-month conversation. So I took a role. So I think for me that was the toughest decision because, you know, I was actually leaving my family, my comfort zone, friends, my network. But as I think back about, would I have changed anything? Absolutely not, right? And then if I think about other tough decisions, mine are mostly geographical. I had another opportunity, phone rings. We've been talking about your development, Sabrina. We would like for you to consider a functional role. I'd always been in the business. Functional role, it's part of rounding you out, da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it. It is actually going to be in the risk management division. Okay, sounds great. Thank you for thinking of me. Hang up the phone. The previous CEO is going to call and chat with me about the role. Very good. Within 1 hour, I get a call back. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the role is in Switzerland. And I said, Mike, that would be a really important
detail.
point to make. So I immediately called my husband and said, that role Mike called me about is in Switzerland. I said, I need to at least have the discussion. And my husband said, you absolutely need to have the discussion. So I think, that was another tough decision. Now, the end of that story is we went to Switzerland. And so I think most of my toughest decisions were really around geography. And then just one, I think, Kelly made me think of this. I don't have children. I always like to disclose that. But you mentioned caregivers. And I think that was another tough decision later in my career when I did become a primary caregiver, my husband and I. And at the time, it seemed like a tough decision because you had to change your priorities. But I will tell you, absolutely no regrets. Don't ever for 1 second let things like that be tough. Spend 1 second thinking about it because you'll have no regrets when you make the decision, as you were saying, to care for your, family and friends.
Absolutely.
You, Kelly.
Yeah, so I kind of glossed over it when I was telling you my background, but my toughest career decision was probably deciding not to practice law anymore. I mean, that's a big choice. You have that amount of time, money invested. You think of yourself as a lawyer as part of your identity. Most of your colleagues and friends at that point are also in the law profession, and it was a decision I had to make. For me, it was combined with having a great opportunity to leave to go do, so that certainly helped. But I was, I was 2 years in and in my 20s and already feeling burnt out, and my health, my mental wellness was suffering, and I could have stuck it out a lot longer, I'm sure. I was good at it too, and it was something that I probably could have had a very successful career practicing law my whole life. No doubt. But I made that decision to leave, and like you, I do not look back. I think it was a very smart decision. I'm glad my 20-something-year-old self was smart enough to do it at the time. And I will say, there are a lot of attorneys who love the work they do. That's not to discount that, but I have a lot of friends who are still in the law profession now, law practice, and they say, oh, I wish I would have gotten out earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, I do hear that a lot, and I have to say it makes me feel a little bit better. But things worked out the way they were supposed to, and when choices present themselves and opportunities, you take them. So that was my toughest.
Yeah. And Deb.
I'm going to start a little different on this question. I love the stories that we're hearing. Let me be clear. You're all responsible for your careers. You're accountable for your careers, and it's your choice. Now, you might, if it's a big shift, like moving to Switzerland or changing law, you may want to talk to a significant other or partner or spouse, right, if that has financial. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. And if you're in a situation where you're bored, not challenged, or unhappy, you have to accept the situation and make a decision. So just remember the wise woman up here saying, it's all your choice and it's all your responsibility. And the choices sometimes are really hard because we tend to go, oh, the team needs me, my customers need me, oh, the company needs me, or my boss, right? Or my family, or caregiving. But it's all your choice because you don't want to live with regrets. I had a couple of pivotal moments. Leaving Liberty Mutual after 19 years, 13 promotions, career path. I always wanted to be a consultant. Why not me? Made a phone call, really did an interview, and got the job, made partner in a year, 18 months. And then I had a position where I loved the CEO. She actually changed my title and raised my salary to be equal to the men. I was very happy at this company. And I decided I want more. And I launched my own business, right? Made a choice to jump and a net will appear. And then just retiring from an amazing career and starting self-powerment. It's been pretty cool. So big choices, no regrets, never looking back.
Absolutely, it's a continuum. It's kind of like the Robert Frost poem, "The Path Not Taken." And you just kind of, every step is in some way, shape, or form, I believe, builds the building block to wherever you are today. So you might look back and say, that wasn't the best time of my career, but it was a stepping stone to what you've achieved now. Mark, I want to give a time to, and I enlisted you onto this panel because I can speak firsthand in terms of what I observe every day and experience and gain from every day in terms of his commitment to both mentorship, which is that coaching and guidance, and he's really great because I don't know if I'm always necessarily coachable, but also as being a sponsor, and that's the sponsorship is the person who's advocating for you. Some mentors are also sponsors, but not all sponsors are mentors. They're kind of two different things. So I'd love, how do you just have you incorporate that? Because I see you really incorporate it into just how you operate every day.
Well, first I have to say, just listening to these amazing women and their careers, I'm honored to be on the panel. So thanks for inviting me. So I'm going to start a little bit differently because my career path led to different ways of thinking about people and organizations and how to interact with them and how to get outcomes. Because in the 20 or so roles I've had throughout my career, I've actually only had 2 times where I was a people manager. So in HR parlance, I've always been an individual contributor, right? I've been an advisor, a consultant, an influencer, a strategist, right? That's been my role. Now, I've led teams of all sizes, some very big teams on very important global projects. And so what I learned is that there is so much power in diversity. There's so much power in understanding the unique talents, experience, perspectives of each individual, right? And if they're not direct reports and you're trying to get a team to accomplish some outcome, it's really important to really try to keenly understand each individual and how they contribute and why their perspective is quite different. Now, obviously, throughout my career, I discovered very early on that women do have really different ways of thinking about things, about doing things, different perspectives that are quite valuable as part of teams. So, and along the way, of course, my family, I have a wife and 2 daughters. All of my partners at Strategy Meets Action for the whole time were all women. So my life has been surrounded by great women, right? But that's really what I've tried to do is to think about each individual, whoever they are, right, and what skills and capabilities they bring to the table, and how I can best support them, right? So, and I think there's one part of it which is, okay, you can think about career planning and advice on next roles and big picture. But as you mentioned, Meredith, I really think it's more about day to day, trying to think about in every situation, how can I give, this person, right, a new opportunity? How can I stretch their capabilities, right? How can I better support them in what they're doing and in their careers? So that's what I've tried to do in my career.
Thank you so much. Really, yeah, and thank you. I say personally, thank you, and thank you in a larger sense of things. So,
He was amazing to work with. Yes.
And some of you
I'm
probably
just sorry I haven't had a chance to work with them.
well, and some of you probably know that my daughter ended up coming into insurance and is now have an insurance career. So I had the great pleasure of mentoring her throughout her career
That's
as well.
amazing. So I understand I'm getting the 0 clock, getting pulled off the stage. So we are at time. I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our panelists. Thank you for investing your time and travel to be part of this important conversation, for all that you're doing for all of us and for our industry that we love so much. Thank you.